Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another Bible study. Today we're going to talk about the famous snake, right? And the judgment on the snake, the serpent. We're going to remember where we've been. We've been on quite a journey with our friends Adam and Eve. They have now decided to usurp God and take wisdom for themselves. They now are shamed, and now we got God's response to it. He's walked in the cool of the day. He's found them, and now we get the reality check of what's going on. Now, this is one of those one texts that everyone's read and think they understand what it is, but there's a lot that's going on here that perhaps you've heard incorrectly because it has to do with creation narratives. The first thing we want to know about the serpent, he shows up in all the creation narratives, so he's a regular feature. Sometimes he's good, sometimes he's bad. He's in the Gilgamesh epic, he's in the Egyptian creation narratives, and in the great Egyptian one, some of the serpents are bad, some of them are good. In ours, of course, he's the sneaky one, but let us not assume yet what the writer wouldn't have assumed to his audience, and that, of course, is a full-blown idea of the devil here, because that's not how they would have originally presented this. He is a creature that's created in the earth. We've already seen that. Later theologians, the Bible's later going to apply the serpent to the Satan figure, of course, and no problem with that. But what they're trying to do here is this is like a chaos agent in the creation story. So he's trying to undo the good, the order that God has done in the creation narrative. And he shows up, and his way of undoing that is by getting humanity to not live out their role. So then we get into this situation where he's now going to be judged, and he is part of that. Now, the first thing we have to realize is the serpent didn't have feet. That's the first thing. I recall in one of my friends telling me that when they were in Christian school, they were given an assignment to draw what the serpent would have been like before the judgment, and of course put legs on him. As we're going to find out, that's not at all what this text is about, and so let's not apply... we already have talking serpents. Let's not apply anything else that seems strange to us that's not already there. All right, so the Lord said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock. So you see he is in the creation order in this point. Of course, we'll talk about how this gets applied later to the Satan figure, and it will progress in theology. It will progress into the point where of course, we understand. And when we get to Revelation, the serpent then becomes full-on dragon in that genre. So this is a usual technique biblically that will point to this dark figure or this chaos, this evil. But at this point, it's just a part of the... he's part of the furniture, as you were, of creation. Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. So he is now the worst. He's the lowest of of these people. Remember, this was created as good. He's now become the cursed one. Now it says, on your belly you shall go. This is where the feet thing comes, right? But here's the thing. When a serpent attacks, it raises itself up. When it's not attacking or it's docile, it drops itself. It's not that it had legs. What he's saying is now it's no longer going to be, it's going to be a docile creature. It's no longer going to have the bite it once had. It's not going to have the fight it once had. It's going to be limited in its strength and its power. This is a judgment of power. It's going to be on its belly in the sense of it's not going to have the same ability to do the damage it did. It will still have ability to do damage as we see, but it's lost some of that. So that's why it says, on your belly you shall go, and the dust you shall eat. This is another thing. Is this his new new way to eat? No. The dust represents death. In all creation stories, it talks about human beings eating dust, which means to die. So what's happened is he said to them, you would not die, right? But what he's inherited is death, and in this new way of death. And I think it's like this spiritual death. I think that's what the creation story is trying to tell us, that this serpent, instead of being part of God's good creation with the possibility of life, has now, when he tricked them and said you would not die, now he's inherited. That's what it means when the dust you shall eat all the days of your life. So it's going to have this, but it's going to now live in a world of death. It's not going to have life within it. And so obviously already in the Bible, you see there's two types of life. There's either eternal life, and then there's this life in being, and the Bible talks about how people are dead until they come to life. Even though they have breath, people can live a deathly life. Like they're just living without that life of God within them. So This is what this our friend the serpent gets, or not our friend. And then it says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. So we want to be careful here. A lot of people right away apply this to demons. And of course, ultimately, they often bring this to Jesus Christ. I think what's going on here, that's not really the purpose of this. Now that he has created this, and because he and this woman, there are going to be constant conflict. This world of enmity means that there's going to be constant conflict. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Unfortunately, the language here perhaps isn't perfect. The word more should be strike. So it's going to be a constant strike. So now evil and humanity are going to be in a constant conflict. So now rather than they're going to be at it, they're going to be hurting each other. There's going to be a constant war. This order, this chaos is constantly going to be doing damage to human beings, and human beings are going to be doing damage to it. Ultimately, of course, yes, the offspring of the woman will become Jesus Christ. He will defeat the serpent as the Satan figure. He will cast it out, and he wins that very, very easily, by the way. What we want to be aware of when we're doing any theologizing is to remind ourselves we do not have a dualistic God. In other words, we don't have a God that's fighting constantly with evil. God is good. He creates order, and chaos comes in disorder, but it isn't as equal. He's not battling this. And as we see in Jesus, he just says, get out of there. You're done. And he wins. As Rick Watt said at our conference, it's not really a fight. He just ends it. Paul will say that the cross defeats the powers and principalities because the cross empties, the cross undoes the temptation. This God empties himself of being God, trying to be like God, because he takes on what we couldn't do. He becomes truly human. And by doing that, he defeats the serpent because he doesn't give into the temptation of autonomy independent of God. That's why Paul talks about the cross defeating the powers of evil. So I don't have a lot of text today because we need to discuss this, and I need to preach on this, is to really what's going on here. So evil now, people, why is evil there? Well, it doesn't tell us why, the origins of it, but it tells us that this is the reality. The temptation came, and now we have the evil is not going to have the power that it thinks it has. That's the whole picture of docility. It's going to not have any life in it. It's death. It's chaos. And it's going to be in constant conflict with humanity. There's going to be this constant right through time where evil is going to constantly be destroying human beings. And boy, have we seen that historically. And we're going to, and it's never going to have, there's never going to be a relationship ultimately between these two, except to be constantly striking at each other. And humanity is going to be striking it by doing the good at times and bringing the order. So that's what's going on here. This is the judgment. And the good news, of course, is in Jesus Christ, this war ends because he defeats it. He ultimately ends this battle by taking on our sin and the chaos upon himself in the cross. All right, so let's get to the questions. The serpent's curse includes 1, being docile, and 2, inheriting death. Why is this curse to the agent chaos, and why is this a curse to the agent chaos, and how are these related to his temptation on Adam and Eve? Pretty much answered that, but maybe you guys want to discuss that more. All right, the curse between the woman and her offspring and the serpent and his offspring represent the agent of evil and humanity being in constant conflict, hurting each other. What is the good news of the gospel in light of this curse? And by the way, I think what you can ask yourselves is, we live in the not yet too. So there's an element of this curse that's still applying. So there's also a picture of hope we have to have, that this is, he has been defeated, but we still see that this is a wounded animal that still acts out. But ultimately the cross, it has defeated him. And of course, in the return of the Lord, the picture in the apocalypse or the revelation is that the dragon gets thrown in the lake of fire, which is the second death, whatever that means, along with death gets thrown in there. And I think it means this death that he's inherited here. And, of course, the worshippers of the beast. All right, and the beast. Okay, and then C.S. Lewis. This is an important question. C.S. Lewis once said, there are 2 equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence, the other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. Think about why is either extreme unbiblical and detrimental to the gospel, because both are. And I've encountered both in my ministry, and they're both unhelpful. So I hope that helps you guys. Again, I want to remind people we're not to live in fear of the devil. He has been defeated. Yes, he has power, but he doesn't have the power that he once had. The cross has defeated him. We're to live in fear of God in a good way, with reverence and love, because he's the ultimate one in power, not this darkness. Chaos has been defeated, and we need to have that as a message in the gospel and a message to people who have been encountered that very real entity. No one's denying the existence, but we're not to live in fear. All right. Have a great day.